Now, here on set with me, Democratic Congressman from Connecticut, Jim Himes. Jim, Happy New Year.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, listen, so the general consensus, this is the president's chance to hit the reset button. I mean, you know, he came in after the second inauguration with a lot of ambition, and it just didn't quite work out for whatever reason. And so now we're going into 2014. Our NBC News politics team really looking at 6 things to expect in the address. The growing issue of income inequality may be #1 in terms of themes. What do you want to hear tomorrow night?
Well, you know, there's a lot the president needs to do tomorrow night, and as your report has said, you know, he's fighting some cross currents. He had a lousy 2013. People are rightly concerned about the functionality of their government. But look, I think the term reset is a little strong. No single speech, of course, is going to, you know, dramatically improve his popularity ratings, or, of course, change the nature of the majority party in the House, which has, you know, single-mindedly dedicated itself to stopping his agenda. Right. So what I hope to hear, and you know, we hear all this buzz about, is he going to, you know, talk about the executive actions he can undertake. More than anything, what I hope to hear is that he needs to continue to pound the vision that he has for this country, and that's a vision, of course, that has bipartisan support. Infrastructure investment, right? I mean, I come from a state in a region where trains are, you know, getting derailed and whatnot. Education, by the way, as an absolutely essential way of dealing with the inequality that will be part of his theme. So that big vision, even though it's not going to be fully achievable, is important.
Well, you have supported the infrastructure bank, which is something he's been positive on as well in the past, which hasn't been done. But quickly, before I move on to something I want to show you from Ted Cruz, people who don't know your district and you talk about income inequality. I mean, Fairfield County, one of your districts, one of the richest in the country, but you have Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is a city that's had its struggles and has a lot of lower income and middle income constituents for you. What do you need to better balance your serving those two crowds?
You know, what those two crowds understand, and of course the president's opponents are going to say that he's turning Americans against each other. What those two crowds, and by the way, what the American middle class understands, is that there needs to be a system which is fair. And that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, and this is why the term income inequality can be problematic, what nobody in America, I think, is seeking to achieve is everybody having the exact same income. The language that I think people understand, whether they're in Bridgeport, middle class, or wealthy in a place like Greenwich, is that we should all start with equal opportunity, that your life shouldn't be determined whether you were born in backcountry Greenwich or in inner city Bridgeport. That's where we need to focus.
Right. It's not so much the isms of redistribution of wealth. It's about equal opportunity, and I think it's a key thing to talk about. Senator Ted Cruz, he went on TV yesterday reprising the rhetoric on Obamacare. Basically, I want to play a clip of it and what he thinks the president should do tomorrow night. Then I want to get your reaction. Have a listen.
Obamacare is a disaster, and you know, for the State of the Union, one of the things President Obama really ought to do is look in the TV camera and say to the over 5 million Americans all across this country who've had their health insurance canceled because of Obamacare, to look in the camera and say, I'm sorry.
The Washington Post points out that, quote, Republicans hope to make Obama's health care law a centerpiece of their midterm election message, but the new poll shows that it is a less important issue for voters than in 2010. You obviously are going to have a race in 2014. How much do you expect that to be the central issue that is run against you?
Well, you know, the more Ted Cruz and Mike Lee speak, and I understand they're both giving responses to the President of the Union, the more they speak, the better off I personally am, in the sense that, you know, swing voters in my district, and this is Connecticut, you know, just listen to Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and say, oh, by the way, Republicans say, what in the world has become of my party? Look, Ted Cruz gave a remarkably fact-free statement there. You know, he didn't talk about 10 million Americans who now have insurance for the first time as a result of Obamacare. He didn't talk about 4 years.
But do you think that'll be the #1 thing stuck in your face?
Absolutely not. No, look, I've been, you know, the Affordable Care Act has been a big part of the political environment for the last 4 years. What's different now versus 4 years ago, when of course Ted Cruz at the time we're talking about death panels, is that now Americans see the reality. And of course the reality is not unblemished. I've been saying since this law was passed that there's things that we should fix. But now Americans are coming to understand that a lot of people are getting health insurance, that costs are coming down, that there are benefits. So I think it's going to be at worst an ambiguous political effect on November.
I just very quickly, we're tight on time. obviously, congressional approval ratings, what they are. The president says executive orders might be something he'll use a lot. Does that bother you? Or are you okay with that?
Well, you know, obviously, as a member of Congress, I hope that the president doesn't stand in front of Congress and say, I'm doing this all without you. I hope that he paints a vision and that he says, join me on these things so that we can get something done. I think, you know, the pendulum's beginning to swing. We got a budget done for the first time in 4 or 5 years, you know, with a lot of votes. So I think the environment is not healthy yet, but getting better.
All right, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Safe travels down to D.C. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.